Number 10, Carol Beaumont.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister for Social Development, what input did she have on the new suite of initiatives to prevent family violence and keep women and children safe that were announced yesterday?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Paula Bennett.
Mr Speaker, I had significant input in regard to the announcements that were made yesterday, and actually this is a great opportunity for me to congratulate Minister Collins for her leadership in the justice sector and the difference that those initiatives are there. I also want to acknowledge Minister Tolley for her leadership within corrections and police, and most certainly I think this is to acknowledge Minister Turia, who has obviously announced her retirement, but her leadership over the last 6 years within social development and the issues of family violence, quite frankly, have been extraordinary.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Carol Beaumont.
How does yesterday's package, primarily focused on those who report domestic violence, assist the 80% of victims of domestic violence that Women's Refuge say don't report that violence?
Mr Speaker.
Paula Bennett.
Well, Mr Speaker, although I think those justice announcements are significant, particularly for those that are re-victimised and are often actually the ones that end up dead, and I think for that we should acknowledge them as being very vitally important in that next steps. There is a huge amount of work that was announced yesterday, particularly from Minister Turia, around the current work programme that is really focused on strengthening and improving the cross-agency response. Within that, Mr Speaker, it's a long list, so I won't go into it, but it is young people's healthy relationships, developing that cross-agency research and evaluation data, an agenda that goes on there, raising the awareness and changing attitudes and behaviours, improving the whole family violence sector, workforce development and training. There's a number of initiatives there that I think will deal with the prevention, which is obviously where we want to put the biggest emphasis.
What NGOs, if any, were consulted with or even briefed about the, quote, social sector initiatives or the, quote, achieving intergenerational change, a whole of government approach initiatives announced yesterday?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Paula Bennett.
Mr Speaker, actually most of it was based off the expert advisory group, who did actually go extensively out to the sector and talk to them. The Minister Collins made reference to the what does she call it? There's a family violence ministerial group. She also made reference to the Justice Symposium that was held earlier this year that had everybody involved, including those NGOs. She talked to Shine, particularly around those safe network ones. We meet regularly with Women's Refuge and other departments, but at the end of the day, ministers are here to design and implement policy. It is what is expected of us, and that is what we have done.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Carol Beaumont.
Does she agree with the Honourable Tariana Turia that, quote, international research indicates that stopping violence occurring in the first place is the key to the long-term reduction in family violence, end quote? And if so, can she explain why the announcement made yesterday had very little focus on prevention, with no new initiatives and no new funding in the prevention area?
Mr Speaker. Well, Mr Speaker, I encourage the member to actually read the information that's out there and the work that is going on. There is no doubt that we will not make apologies for focusing on those who do report violence, and as we say, more often than not, they are re-victimised, and they are often than not really the biggest tragedies that happen in this country. So actually getting them safe and putting those mechanisms that were announced yesterday around them is important. But, Mr Speaker, there is a range of work that is going on in the preventative space. We spend over nearly $70 million just within social development. That doesn't recognise the contributions from ACC, police and other departments that goes in. It is our focus. It is where we are going. Cross-agency work, including those NGOs, is actually where it needs to happen.
Point of order.
Point of order, Carol Beaumont.
Mr Speaker, I seek leave to table parliamentary library research showing that 3 of the initiatives that seem to be the centrepiece of achieving intergenerational change, which are the It's Not OK campaign.
Order. Just briefly describe it and I'll put the
Okay, it's parliamentary library research showing the 3 main initiatives were launched in 2007, 2008 and 2013 respectively.
Order. Leave us sort, if anybody can sort out exactly what we're tabling, but it's parliamentary research information. Leave us sort to table it. Is there any objection? There is objection.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, Sue Moroney.
To the Minister, has she had any input into the plight of the Sexual Abuse Survivors Trust, an organisation with 20 years of experience supporting victims of sexual abuse in Christchurch, that is being forced to shut down their service tomorrow because of a $34,000 shortfall in funding?
Mr Speaker,
Honourable Paula,
I have answered questions on this organisation just in the last 2 or 3 weeks, so obviously yes, if the member had taken any notice of that. What actually we are saying is that there are issues around that provider, so it is not our desire to actually see it shut down, but we have ensured that the services will be available for those that need it, because we've worked with other NGOs who say they do have the capacity to actually fill that and have had extra funding through this excellent government who put more than $10.4 million more into sexual violence services under this latest budget.
Question number 11, Brendan Horan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister of Housing, what, if any, specific progress has he achieved on completing housing accords with Tauranga City Council